This is the story of Adaobi, a girl born into a certain crowded Enugu ghetto, where zinc crops sang whenever rain fell. Children grew up with mixed feelings of hope and fear, uncertain about their future. Adaobi was born into a family of 3. She was the eldest, having 2 younger ones, Ifunanya and Chinedu. Their home was a single-room apartment with cracked walls and a wooden door that never fully closed. At night, the sound of generators hummed like restless spirits, and the smell of fried akara floated through the narrow streets. But if there was one thing Mama Adaobi had, it was strength. Every morning, before the sun fully rose, Mama Adaobi would tie her wrapper firmly around her waist, lift heavy sack of garri, and head to the market. Her hands were always white with cassava dust. Her back bent from years of struggle, but her spirit never broke. Education is the only inheritance I can give you, she will often tell Adaobi, and Adaobi listened. Adaobi was different. While other children played in the streets till nightfall, Adaobi would sit on a low wooden stool, reading her books under the weak glow of a kerosene lamp. When hunger pinched her stomach, she swallowed it with determination. When school fees delayed, she stayed home but never gave up. She was brilliant, exceptionally brilliant. Through primary and secondary schools, Adaobi carried excellence like a crown nobody could steal. Her mates envied her. Her mother's neighbors envied her secretly. Some people laughed with her, but deep down, they wished that they were Adaobi because she was exceptionally brilliant. And finally, when she gained admission into one of the prestigious universities in Nigeria, Adaobi was very happy. Mama Adaobi was exceptionally happy. They celebrated. They cried in joy because their story was about to change. Adaobi has always wanted to be a powerful woman. A woman who commands both money and respect. She always wanted to be great and dine among great men. So that admission was a stepping stone for her. She did everything within her power not to let her mother down. She studied, she read, she prayed, she worked. Mama Adaobi sold garri in the rain. She sold garri under the scorching sun. She sold garri when her legs trembled. Also, Adaobi could sit in lecture halls. And then, one unforgettable day, Adaobi graduated. Not just as a graduate, but as the best graduating student in her department. The entire hall stood still as her name echoed. Mama Adaobi cried openly. Her wrapper soaked with tears. But this time, it was tears of joy. My garri has turned into gold, she whispered. Graduation came with joy, and then came silence. Months passed. Adaobi submitted CVs. She attended interviews. She applied for scholarships, both local and foreign. Rejection emails piled up like unpaid bills. All she was just saying was, "No vacancy. We'll get back to you. Sorry. Unfortunately. This, that." Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. reality hit hard. There was no job. Adaobi wept bitterly. All her dream was to get a high-paying job immediately after graduation to take care of herself and her family. The only job offer she kept getting was to teach in private schools for just peanuts. Some offered 15,000 naira. Some offered 10,000 naira. In this 21st century, gosh, Adaobi would lament. There was no money for further studies, and Mama Adaobi's garri business was barely feeding the family. Then one evening, as rain drummed loudly on their zinc roof, Mama Adaobi sighed deeply and told her daughter,
"My daughter, since you are not able to find a job yet, come and be helping me in the market." "Mom, it seems as if my certificate is a waste. People are mollocking me." "My daughter, there is light at the end of every tunnel. Don't give up yet. Don't worry, everything is going to be alright. I know the God I serve."
The next morning, Adaobi followed her mother to the market. She carried bags of garri with her mother and sat beside her mother in the market to sell. And then the mockery began. "Is this not the first class girl? Best graduating student my foot. First class K, hey? Almost school na scam oh." This was what was going on in the market, in their neighborhood, at home, everywhere. Adaobi broke down. She wept, but then she did not give up. Instead, she re-strategized. If garri paid my school fees, garri can equally change our lives. She settled to sell garri, but then in a different way altogether. Adaobi no longer saw garri as a shame, but as an opportunity. She discovered problems most garri sellers had, which includes poor packaging, poor hygiene, no branding, and no creativity. So she got a packaging and branded her garri Adaobi Premium Garri. That was how she blew up. And later on, she remembered how students usually drink garri in school with sugar, milk, coconut, groundnut, and rock salt. So she decided to create another product, which she named Adaobi Garri Parfait. With these two products, Adaobi started making sales, slowly and consistently. Her products started entering the market, people started knowing her products, and of course, you can differentiate her product from other garri because hers was a first-class branded garri. She started supplying to shops, kiosks, stalls. You hardly come across any shop in the neighborhood or in the market without seeing Adaobi Premium Garri. If you enter any small shop or kiosk, Adaobi Garri Parfait will be smiling at you. And of course, it is irresistible. People that laughed at her when she started envying her all over again. "This girl is incredible," they will say. Then, one fateful evening, luck smiled at Adaobi. She had just posted both her parfait and her premium garri on her Instagram and Facebook pages when suddenly one notable Instagram influencer reposted her. And boom! Comments started flooding in. Likes, comments, reposts, and all that. Adaobi went viral. Her business page went viral. Everybody was talking about the premium garri girl. Adaobi told her story online. How she was born into a poor home, how her mother struggled to see her through education, how she emerged the best graduating student in her department, and how she went back to square one selling garri with her mother, and finally how she branded her product. Adaobi's story inspired so many people, especially young graduates who has lost hope of making it. Unemployed persons. Her story made people to understand that there is dignity in labor. Her fame attracted both local and international investors who invested in her business. She soon started supplying to hotels, schools, offices, supermarkets, malls, everywhere. Adobe took over the garri production and packaging industry. She built a big factory and employed so many people. She built a mansion for her mother, trained her siblings in school, and made sure that her mother never lacked anything because that woman has really suffered. Adobe's story became a folk tale in every home in their ghetto community. The poor girl, who despite her background was determined and later became the CEO of Adobe Premium Garri. Hello everyone, let me know what you learned from this story. Thank you for watching and kindly subscribe to this channel. Bye!
Sometimes things don't always work out exactly the way we want, but knowing when to apply wisdom is what makes the difference. Never give up on yourself. My name is Adobe and I am the CEO of Adobe Premium Garri.